Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Algae Corner with me, Dr. West Bishop. We have a fun and exciting episode today talking about how to identify algae. Now, identification is very difficult for most species, especially in a field site. And you probably have many different types of algae present in your pond or your water body, although only one or two may be the real culprit of some of the issues you're seeing. But what we're going to do today is hone in on some of the characteristics that can help us identify it. One of the key things is first describing it as planktonic. Now this is distributed through the water column, giving a color to the water. Or filamentous, these could be mat-like entanglements that show up on the bottom or the surface of the water. Or plant-like macroalgae. Now these grow up from the bottom of the system. They're often confused with aquatic macrophytes, but these are actually a group of macroalgae that we'll talk about. Now another important diagnostic clue could be looking at the coloration of the algae. Different algae contain different pigments in them for attaining sunlight, attaining energy through use of the sun's rays. Now, one of the common types is green algae. So there's green algae, there's blue-green algae, there's red algae, there's even gold algae. So there's many different types of algae, and they can have many different pigments that make them appear the way they are. So the first group I want to talk about are the green algae. Now, green algae contain primarily chlorophyll A and B. Now, this reflects that green color. This makes them look either a bright or a dull green in nature, and these are all over the board. These can be very small, planktonic and microscopic, or they can be the thick, large mats, or indeed they include the macroalgae as well. Now the next group I want to talk about are the blue-green algae, also known as cyanobacteria. Now these contain the pigment phycocyanin, so this is a blue-green pigment. So as opposed to just the chlorophyll, they also have this other pigment that makes them appear a darker green, sometimes even black in color with this darker blue-green pigment. And then another group of algae known as the diatoms. These are really neat organisms. They often appear goldish or gray color to yellow-green in color, and that's because they have a pigment called fucoxanthin. And diatoms, interestingly, they often look like little pieces of glass because they have silica in their cell wall. So very, very common group, and they may cause your water to look turbid or brown in color, but not always as bad as the other types. So understanding the color of the algae can also help us narrow down what type of algae is in your system, the group of algae we're dealing with. Another way to determine the type of algae you actually have is getting down and dirty, feeling the algae, actually getting there and grabbing it and smelling it and seeing what type you have. Now be careful, some algae are indeed slimy, some have bacteria with them, some even produce those nasty toxins that can cause skin rashes. So be careful, wash your hands before you eat anything, but I do have a number of algae here that we're going to cover that you may be able to identify just by going out there and touching them. First thing I want to cover is Pithophora. Now this is Pithophora here. It is a green filamentous algae, and you can grab it, you can squeeze it out, and it almost looks like a cotton ball. This is also known as cotton algae or horsehair algae. It does have little frills that come off of it, meaning it's branched, and often you can see little tiny dark specks. Those are the aconites, or the resting stage cells. So again, this cottony one you can squeeze out and it looks like a sponge is cotton algae or horsehair algae known as Pithophora. Cladophora is very similar as well. Another common type you may commonly see in the field is Spirogyra. Spirogyra is more of a bright green filamentous algae, more slick feeling. You can squeeze it out, but it's still sort of slimy, slick. It's often called silk algae because it is a little more slick, not that cottony feeling one like Pithophora is. Another algae that you may run into are these thick black filamentous mats, and this is Lyngbya. So Lyngbya is a filamentous cyanobacterium, often dark in color. It can grow way down in the sediments, appear almost black in nature sometimes. And this does smell bad too. This produces some taste and odor compounds, MIB and geosmin, making it smell dirty and fishy. And again, this can be a potential toxin producer, so wash your hands after you touch it. Yet another common type of algae you may be able to identify just by grabbing it and looking at it is Chara. So this is a type of macroalgae. And here you can see it often grows up from the bottom of the pond like a macrophyte or a land plant, but this is truly a type of algae. It doesn't have any true root stems or leaves. And also, if you get in and smell this one, it typically smells like a skunk or garlic. Some people describe it as muskgrass is a common name for Chara, or this macroalgae that may be in your system. And the last one I want to cover today is this blue-green algae color. So these are cyanobacteria, and these are very difficult to grab. You see they can form scums or just be distributed through the water column, but these are cyanobacteria and diagnostic of those types of algae. And most of those are potential toxin or taste and odor producers. Even though you may not be able to grab them, they often form this color or scums on the surface. So this is just a quick overview of a handful of common algal species you may be able to identify if you actually get down and dirty and grab them. So though we looked at a few different diagnostic species today, or a few that we can narrow down, we didn't nearly cover the 30,000 species. And it is very difficult to tell without the use of specialized laboratory equipment what type of algae you may have. Some of the planktonic algae are extremely small, and they require a microscope for correct identification. And it is important to keep an eye on even these planktonic types, because again, you got some good types that are good for your system, and then you have some very bad planktonic types that are not good for your system and certainly can be toxin producers as well. So specific algae identification can be difficult in the field even for experienced people, but there are some diagnostic clues that we covered, such as what they look like, what the broad category is, their coloration, and what they feel and smell like that can help you narrow it down. But if you need more help, if you want to send in a sample, CPRO offers an algae identification kit. You can send in a sample, we'll look at it under the microscope and give you back a nice pretty report telling you what types you have and whether or not they're a problem, whether or not we need to talk about management of them. It's as simple as sending us a sample and seeing if your water's safe for your kids, safe for your pets, safe for you to play in. For more information about algae identification or potential management solutions, come get a hold of us. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. And thank you for your time today, and thanks for tuning in to the Algae Corner.